you, this is your time, so let's get to your questions, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks so much.
And if you can raise your hands, I'll bring the mic over to you. Here we go.
We got one right over here.
I think she was first, though. I'll get you to...
Oh, sure.
Welcome, Congresswoman
Bachman.
In a world where many foreign leaders have very little respect for women in general, how will you stand up to some of the leaders of those rogue nations when they look down upon women anyway? Will you give them what for, and will you stand up to them with boldness there too?
I absolutely will. You can count on it. I've been married 33 years. I've raised 5 biological children, and I've raised 23 foster children. So I've raised 28 children. If I can stare down and raise 28 good kids, I can stare down a rogue dictator. I can do it. The United States right now is not respected across the world. I hear that over and over again from colleagues as all of us are going around the world visiting different leaders. We are not respected. And it isn't because Barack Obama is a man or I'm a woman. That isn't it. It's because of the policies that the United States has had. Barack Obama has put forward a persona of weakness regarding the United States. One of the greatest areas of weakness I think that he showed is when he put daylight between the United States and Israel. One of the first presidents ever to do that. That was a very bad decision that the president made, and I believe that he helped to create a climate of hostility in the Middle East region, unlike anything that we've seen in the last 40 years. So I'm very upset about what the president has done and the level of hostilities and the fact that the president has led from behind. That's his administration's words. That's his foreign policy, leading from behind. I will guarantee you, when I'm President of the United States, I will lead from the front. I will not lead from behind. And one thing you can be assured, I won't step one toe out of the United States and apologize for the United States of America. That will never happen. Because the United States is the greatest force for good that the history of the world has ever seen. And this is another reason why our economic strength is so vital. Let me just answer this, and I'll get to your question in just a second. The International Monetary Fund has said, this may be the last election, if we don't change course, this may be the last election when the United States is the #1 economic superpower of the world. Because they say by 2015, what other nation will eclipse us as the economic superpower? That's right, China. This is the other thing you need to know. Reagan understood this. If you want to be the premier military superpower of the world, you have to be the premier economic superpower of the world in order to support that. Right now, we are sending interest payments over to China. You saw about 6 weeks ago, China launched their first naval aircraft carrier. Guess who paid for that aircraft carrier?
We did.
We did. Guess who's paying for China's jet fighter craft? We are. By 2015, our interest payments will be so large, we will pay for the entire People's Liberation Army of China, which is the world's largest employer. Our interest debts will be so high within 10 years that we will spend more money financing the interest on the U.S. debt than we spend on the entire United States military. So there will be choices that have to be made. And how much do you want to think that our politicians in Washington would choose our military over welfare payments? These are very important times that we live in. And that's why I say this is the election of all elections in 2012. We have to choose wisely for 2012. We can't just have the other team in another jersey this time. That isn't good enough. It's not good enough just to settle for anyone but Barack Obama. This is the election when we have to have a constitutional conservative who gets these problems in Washington, who from day one will know what to do. That's what I bring to this field that is different from anyone else. I've been fighting on the front lines in full gale force winds, even taking on my own party in instance after instance, because I believe you put principle over party. Because right now it's got to be about the nation, and we've got to get the country back.
Congresswoman Bachmann, my name is Mike Marino. I'm from Holderness, New Hampshire. My question to you is directed to your experience as a tax litigator. We all, or a large number of us, like yourself, have paid taxes over our lifetime through the W-2 income, as reported. And yet we all know that there's a large underground economy, cash earners who don't report their fair share. What can you do about that and equal the playing field for us?
I think that one reason why you're seeing such a large underground of what you might call a black market is because people, there's a tax theory that says anytime you tax people more than 20% of their income, and that would be from all sources, so that would be state, local, federal, your sales tax, add it all up. Once it reaches more than 20% of a person's income on average, human behavior says that's too much. I need to keep more for myself. And so unfortunately, people then break the law by not reporting that income. So what that says is that we're taxing people too much money. And I think that that's true. We are taxing people too much because the government is doing too many things it has no business doing. Yes. We need to back the government off of doing things that it's doing right now. There's departments that I would shut down, for instance. I think that we need to completely cut back on what government is spending, and then we won't need to tax people at that level.
Another question over here, and then I'll move over to the other side, guys.
Okay, hello, Congressman. We talk about cutting spending, and the Democrats say we don't care. We talk about taxation, and that certainly affects people's incentive, and the Democrats call us greedy. But what we've seen in the last couple of years, more than anything, it seems to me, is a double down or triple down or quadruple down on regulations and policies that have been driving business out of this country for 40 years or 50 years or 60 years. Why aren't we talking about cutting those and making better sense out of the regulations so that we could stop driving jobs away and start bringing them back?
Well, you're right. That's one of the key components of my economic recovery plan, because part of what I want to do is introduce a mother of all repeal bills. So when the liberals get in power, they have mother of all spending bills. Obama's was $1 trillion spending bill. I want a mother of all repeal bills, because the number one thing that I hear from job creators, and I'm a job creator, my husband and I started our own company. We turn a profit. We think turning a profit is a good thing. We want more people to be able to turn a profit in their business. The job creators tell me that the regulatory compliance kills them and is more aggravating and more of a hassle than anything else that they deal with. And the number one regulatory problem that there is today is the government takeover of health care called Obamacare. That's the number one regulatory burden. 3 weeks ago, UBS came out with a study that said the number one reason businesses aren't hiring is because of Obamacare. Well, it makes sense. Because Obamacare costs, you just put an extra price tag of at minimum another $3,000 on the head of every additional employee that you hire if you have over 50 employees. And you know who that hurts more than anyone? Unskilled workers. You want to know why we have African American youth unemployment at about 45% right now? Good kids that want to work? It's because you've got regulatory burden. The regulatory burden, more than anything else, is keeping employers from hiring these good kids or Hispanic kids in the 30% range. Unemployment. Good kids that want a job can't work. I mean, we're talking about people who are here legally and they can't work. And it's because the regulatory burden is keeping employers from hiring them. I was considered the chief critic of Barack Obama on Obamacare. That's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned. And I am the chief author of the bill to repeal Obamacare, and also the chief author of the bill to repeal the Jobs and Mortgage Destruction Act, also called the Dodd-Frank bill. Because Dodd-Frank does to financial services, the banking and insurance industry, what Obamacare does to healthcare. In other words, it destroys it and it makes it more expensive. How many of you heard just this last week that there's going to be a new $5 fee on debit cards? Yes. Well, thank you very much, federal government. Thank you very much, Barney Frank. Thank you very much, Chris Dodd, for putting that in place, because the government thinks it's doing such a wonderful thing when it squeezes in one side, but then the squeeze comes out another side. And so that's why this regulatory burden is killing job creation. More than anything else, It's the regulatory burden that is killing job creation. That 1.8 trillion every year in compliance with regulations doesn't even include Dodd-Frank, doesn't even include Obamacare. And that's one thing you need to know, that I will not rest as nominee of the Republican Party until I can also elect 13 more like-minded U.S. senators to go with me to Washington, D.C., so we have a 60-seat filibuster-proof Senate so we can repeal Obamacare. You've got to have 60 senators to get rid of it, and I'm going to elect them. I'm an extremely hard-working woman, and in my last election, Nancy Pelosi made me one of her top targets to defeat, and I decided just for spite she wouldn't win, I would. And so I raised more money for my re-election than any member of Congress in the history of Congress, and I did it with an average donation of $45. It was a movement and a voice that we sent to Washington, D.C. That's the movement that I want to take to the White House as well. We don't need to have big special interest money. There's enough of us. If we all band together, we can do this thing. And don't for a minute worry about Barack Obama having $1 billion. You hear about him having $1 billion. He's going to need $12 billion, and that still won't be enough to get him reelected, because I go all over the country, and I want you to know, people have made their mind up. The cake is baked. Barack Obama will be a one-term president. I don't take it for granted. I don't take it lightly. I'm gonna scrap and fight as hard as I can, but I want you to know the American people have made up their mind, and that's just the Democrats. They don't want it. So you know that the Republicans aren't going to vote for it.
Over here. Sorry, over here doesn't help you. Sorry, Congressman. Hi, Congressman. Welcome very much. Welcome back to New Hampshire.
Well, thank you. I like your choice of clothing.
Yes, well, I did this all myself. It was just
very good.
On the spur of the moment. For the last few weeks, we've seen what's been going on in New York City with the Occupy Wall Street movement. That's currently also spreading in other towns throughout the United States. And the media is making a very great comparison between Occupy Wall Street movements and also the Tea Party. If anyone would be able to comment on what kind of comparison that is, I think it should be used. So what comment would you make about the Occupy Wall Streets in comparison to the Tea Party movement in America?
Well, first of all, I would tell the Occupy Wall Street movement to move to the gates in front of the White House. If you want to go somewhere to complain about where the economy is, you go and complain right at the gates of the White House. And never forget, it's Barack Obama who had a gigantic advantage when it came to campaign contributions from Wall Street over John McCain. So it was the Democrat contributions from Wall Street that got him elected. That's where they need to go and focus their energy. And so the Tea Party movement was truly organic. People all across the country. What I love about the Tea Party movement is that it's made up of Democrats, it's made up of independents, it's made up of Republicans, it's made up of apolitical people, it's made up of constitutional conservatives, people who've never voted a day in their life. That's the Tea Party movement, because the Tea Party movement is an idea. It's an idea that is completely in line with our forebears from 1776. It's our forebears that said we're taxed enough already. That's the Tea Party. It's our forebears who said don't spend more money than what you take in. It's our forebears that said act within the limits of the Constitution. Yeah. That's what the Tea Party movement is saying. That's the movement that I identify with. That's the movement that's going to take the country back. And this is it. It's 2012. This is when we do it. We have to win in 2012. We have to change things in 2012. Because if we don't repeal Obamacare in 2012, we will never repeal it. And let me tell you why. Because it will so metastasize into the federal government, and it will so metastasize into your state government, into all the private health insurance plans until those plans collapse. Because that's the intent, by the way, that all the private insurance companies are going to collapse and then fold into the government, because the original goal has always been socialized medicine. That is what Barack Obama wants to see come about. And there's already a study that was done by the Lewin Group that said 114 million Americans will be thrown off their private health insurance. Well, what happens when that happens? Then they'll all go running to the government. This is not a good picture. And in the bill, I was one of the people who had discovered there was $105,464 million in the Obamacare bill. Do you know that you won't find one story written about that before the bill was voted on? How could you have senators and members of Congress vote on Obamacare to spend $105,464 million? That's a lot of money, by the way, even for Washington, and not know that that's in the bill? How could they do that? Nobody read it. Nobody read it. Because the bill didn't even get printed until 3 hours before they voted on it in the Senate.
That's why they didn't read it.
That's right. Nancy Pelosi said, you gotta pass the bill to know what's in it. And so you know what that money's being used for? It's post-dated checks. Barack Obama's busy cashing those checks right now to implement Obamacare today all over the country. So you see, we only have one election. We only have one chance when we can get rid of socialized medicine, and it will change our country forever. Forever. In the future, we may by some chance elect a Republican again in the future, but we will never again control the agenda if Obamacare stays into place. That's why this is so serious. That's why when you hear candidates say to you, well, I'll issue an executive order to get rid of Obamacare, you can know that they don't understand how serious repeal of Obamacare is. Or when they say, I'm going to issue 50 waivers to all the states to get rid of Obamacare, you can know they don't understand what it takes to get rid of Obamacare. The only way to get rid of it is to repeal it. That's the only way, and you do that through the United States Congress. It's not going to be easy. This is the granite state. This will be like pushing a big granite boulder up over a granite mountain. This is going to be really tough to undo. But I'm here to tell you today, in New Hampshire, I am up for that fight. That's why I'm running for President of the United States, because I am absolutely committed to the full-scale repeal of Obamacare. It's not good enough for our nominees to say they're going to sit behind the desk and wait to have the bill put on their desk. It's going to take a president who's going to be willing to be a leader and go out before the election and elect 13 more like-minded senators. But even after the election, it's going to be hard, because that whole bill is nothing but interest groups. That's all it is, and it's going to take one tough cookie to fight those special interest groups. I'm up for it. I'm up for it. That's why I want you to consider well on your choice for who you make your nominee. Our candidate has to be committed to the fight, not just the issue, but the fight to get rid of it, because that's what it's going to take. We have to fight to get rid of that, get rid of the Dodd-Frank, which remember is the Jobs and Mortgage Destruction Bill, and also change the tax code. I've been the only tax lawyer in Congress, different times when I've been there. I'm the only tax lawyer now that's running for president. I want to lead that fight to change the tax code, because that's also the job-killing center of the universe, the tax code. I want to change that to make for pro-growth policies in America. That's what we need. Grow the economy, and then the jobs follow automatically, because the government doesn't create jobs, the private sector does.
GrokTV.